I'm Hilary Hendershot, your host, and this is Profit Boss Radio, The Retirement Years, episode 169. The Retirement Years on Profit Boss Radio is your weekly wealth building and retirement mastermind. Profit Boss is also a movement for women who want to reach their full wealth potential and be financially free. Let me be your guide as you defy the odds, take control of your money, grow your wealth, and retire well. Do you want the secrets of wealth and retirement to be yours? This is the place. I'm Hilary Hendershot. I'm a certified financial planner running a leading advisory firm for women and couples, and I'm sharing with you real stories from real life and real people who are making it happen. Forget Wall Street. You ready? Let's do this. Welcome to episode 169 of Profit Boss Radio. Exciting stuff for you today. It seems like the perfect time, given all the uncertainty and unrest and changes people are making in their life and being forced to make because of the coronavirus pandemic, for me to be providing you resources to support you to move forward and make power moves in your career. So here to help me in that endeavor is Lauren McGoodwin, colleague and friend of mine. She's the founder and CEO of Career Contessa, and I will be giving away copies of her books until they're gone. So stay tuned for instructions about how to get us to send you your free copy of Power Moves. A little bit about Lauren. She founded Career Contessa in 2013 after experiencing a gap in career development resources for women who might be job searching, soul searching, leading and managing, or trying to find new ways to advance within their careers. After all, women account for 50% or more of the workforce, and the workforce is less defined than ever before. So it seemed crazy to Lauren and totally outdated that a resource for us didn't exist. So she created it. Lauren is formerly a university recruiter for Hulu. She has a bachelor's in education and a master's in communication management. And she lives now in beautiful Redondo Beach, California, where she meets her 10,000 steps a day goal and lives with her husband. To claim your free copy of Lauren's new book, Power Moves, just please leave me an honest review on either iTunes or Google or Yelp, and then visit the show notes for today's episode at hilaryhendershot.com/169. Click on the link, give us your contact information, and we will send you a signed copy of Lauren's new book. Now, heading into this season, it is, the beginning of September 2020 already, the longest year ever in existence. And life sure has changed this year, and I'm hoping I can help you change and transform it even more. We'll be talking more and more about my upcoming Wealth Multiplier course on the show and ways that you can get coaching from me and my team directly. I invite you to consider having this be the last year that money is an area of struggle for you, an area where you don't get what you want. That's what I'm most interested in for you, is having you get 100% and more of what you want. Stay tuned again for more information about the Wealth Multiplier course. You can also check out the sales page on my website. It is live today, and find out more details about this 6-month intensive one-on-one mindset and cash flow coaching experience. Enjoy my interview with Lauren McGoodwin. Lauren, Miss Career Contessa, welcome to Profit Boss Radio.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I loved your book, first of all. And I noticed, first off, in the title, the phrase career of purpose. So what do you mean? What's a career of purpose? And who are some of your favorite role models who are living a career of purpose?
Yes, I feel like people either have a love-hate relationship with the word, find your career purpose.
Yeah.
And then like the other one they love hate is, find your passion, right?
I hate that one. I'm just going to tell you.
No, I do too. And that's why I find it funny because I think sometimes people read it quickly and they're like, passion, purpose. Yeah. So I picked purpose on purpose because for me, when I think about building a career of purpose, I think about building a career that aligns with your values and it intertwines with your interests, and it's something that you're good at, and it's using your strengths and your skills. And so for when I think about building a career of purpose, it is multidimensional. It is something that grows with you as you change, as your life stages and your career interests change. And so that's really important to me, is not telling people to go chase down this one thing, because we are not fixed beings. So I think when it comes to building a career purpose and people who were really good role models, I mean, honestly, a lot of them I put in the book. There's a whole chapter about power women, power moves, power women. And I have the best job in the world because I get to talk to so many women about their careers and how they got there and what they do. And so, for example, Rosanna Durfee, who's now the VP of Inclusion, Diversity, and Belonging at LinkedIn, like, she's built her career purpose by following not only what she's good at, but also recognizing that anytime she gets to an inflection point, she follows her curiosity. So I really appreciate people who are able to also articulate that this purpose isn't maybe something they've written down on a piece of paper, but they can start to recognize like when they're going to make that power move, or when that inflection point is coming, or when, they feel like they're kind of getting to that place where they need to make a pivot. Usually it's maybe they've hit some sort of status quo at work or something like that. So, there's so many examples of people who are doing, you're an example of someone who's doing work within your purpose, so I think they don't all have to be entrepreneurs either. And that's also, I think, important to kind of showcase, is that there are people who are able to work within their purpose, and it's not always for themselves.
Well, and when you say for themselves, you mean because they own the business, right?
Yeah, as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And I think at that level, the level of the women you're talking about, that their careers are entrepreneurial, that they're doing what they're doing inside a corporation that has many employees and other strategic objectives, but that they're engaging many of the same design tactics that us entrepreneurs do.
Yeah.
And by the way, how did you get them to let you publish those pictures of them?
Yes.
Who drew those?
Yeah. So someone who worked for us as a graphic design assistant one summer, she was awesome, and we've stayed in touch. And she works with me on like any big projects we're doing at Career Contessa. And I was like, I kind of have this big project. I have this book. Would you help me with, because in the book, there's a lot of like worksheets and graphics and illustrations and she helped me with all of them. Her name's Paige Gutierrez. And when I went to her and I was like, so I want to include these interviews with women, but I think it would be really fun to include illustrations. I think she was like, and I was like, can you do that? She's like, so we actually had to go back and forth a few times with some people who were just very funny about like, is that what I look like? I don't want to be that as an illustration, and the reason why I went with illustrations is I was published as an illustration in an article like years ago. And I was joking that I've never looked so good in my life as when I was an illustration. So I wanted illustrations, but also I did want to truly make that part of the book feel personal. These are humans that I'm sharing their stories versus like a worksheet and things like that. So well,
we got Paige a little shout out, didn't we?
Yes. No, Paige is awesome. By the way, she can illustrate, even though I don't think she really wanted to.
Perfect. And the reason why I asked about the word purpose is I think of it as somewhat synonymous with the word calling. So your purpose on the planet or your calling on the planet versus find your passion, that kind of, I think it's kind of platitudinal. But I worked pretty intensely with a coach last year, and I'm currently in the process of redesigning like my entire business around what I articulated as my purpose. And yes, it already was purpose driven. Obviously, I'm interested in empowering women around money, and so are you. But defining it that specifically was super powerful and clarifying. So I'm glad we talked about that. And it sounds like you've gotten some interesting reactions to the title you chose. So why are women so challenged to find careers that we love? What is the deal? Do they take some people aside in high school and give them the secret keys? What's going on?
No, that's the unfortunate part. I think, and a big part of my book is actually spent on this like pre-research, right? The research of like, how did we get here? Because it seems to be that all of us feel, and when I say us, I mean us women. And I should preface, like, I wrote this with a lot of research based on the millennial generation, but even if you're not a millennial, you've been shaped by some of these characteristics that have shaped the millennial generation, because we're such a massive generation that we naturally impact everybody else. So whether you're, baby boomer, Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y, like everybody is now being kind of shaped by these characteristics that kind of came about while the millennial generation was growing up. For example, like we were the first generation to be quote unquote tech savvy and to kind of have everything instant on demand. We were the first generation to grow up with sort of like more of us went to college than any other generation before that. And that was when, of course, the education system started to change, where it was no longer like, oh, just go to your state school and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg and there's plenty of spots. All of a sudden it became really competitive, which meant a lot of people were raised to almost be like overscheduled. And so what happens is like your whole life is there's a game plan, you're following it, you're checking off the boxes. It's kind of like this game of life or this game of school that you're playing. And the promise or the sell is that, hey, X plus Y equals success. So as long as you have the X and the Y, you're going to be successful.
That's the rub, isn't it?
Yeah. And so what happens is for a lot of people is it's about managing expectations, right? And a lot of us experience this expectation hangover. So it's not that we actually are so unhappy or that we're not getting what we wanted or, what's out there. It's that we were sold this, quote unquote dream of it was going to be like this. You were going to have, and part of that is, and I talk a lot about this in the book too, about like ditching the myth of the dream job, like it doesn't exist. And part of that is because when you fantasize about this dream job or this dream career, it's engaging and your boss is amazing, your commute doesn't suck and your coworkers are awesome and your best friends, but like that's not the reality. And so what happens is like, if you're only fantasizing about all these positive pieces and there's none of the negatives like hellish commutes and absentee bosses and coworkers who you just can't communicate well with no matter what you seem to do, et cetera, et cetera. And even worse, obviously for underrepresented groups, there's discrimination that I didn't even just mention. I'm just talking about like on a human level, like not liking your coworker and
right,
whatnot. But so we don't imagine, or those parts aren't part of the fantasy. And so then we're not prepared for them. So I think what I found, at least and I kind of started the book like this, is that we become obsessed with this self-improvement and thinking that like, this is because we're not working hard enough. This is because there's something wrong with us. But really the expectations are those things that kind of set you up to fail to begin with. And all of us were sold this, collection of expectations that just don't exist. And even if you went into it with, your eyes wide open and being like, oh yeah, I know that when I graduate, it's going to be tough. You don't know what you don't know. And so I think that kind of in a nutshell encompasses kind of the whole first section of the book, which is in a lot more detail of specifically how we got here. But that the message of like, there was a woman's quote book that I quoted in the book, and it's like women of our generation heard that they could, or were told that they can be anything, and instead they heard you have to be everything. That is very, very real about the messaging that we were sent, the media examples, the way our relationships were with parents, with coaches, the feedback. And while school might have been set up like that, work wasn't set up like that. Real life isn't set up like that. And so it's just it's kind of a dramatic expectation hangover that you have to experience.
Expectation hangover. I don't want to say I like that phrase, but it is a phrase that I definitely don't like the phrase, but it communicates, right? It's like, okay, you were expecting, and I felt that too when I was in my early 20s. I graduated, I busted my butt and I got 1B in college. And seriously, when I graduated from college with a 3.9 GPA, I thought I can write my ticket. Turns out the joke was on me,
Yeah.
So let's talk about power moves. And obviously power moves are leverage points. And you say, you like to think of power moves as major or big, notable or medium, and daily or small. And what the impression I got when I read that sentence is, oh, I got it. So if I'm taking Lauren's coaching, I'm infusing my voice, my perspective, my choices, my conversations with these power moves. But essentially, advocate isn't the right word, but constantly being an advocate for myself and moving. I mean, I guess it's a little bit of politics, but strategizing to move forward toward where I'm trying to go. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I like to describe power moves as their actions, behaviors, habits. They can be a lot of things, but the main part is that they're made with intention. So you are intentionally making that move. It's about being proactive versus reactive, right? So whether you get up in the morning and you decide to, go through a morning routine, that's an intentional move that you're making to set your day up for success, or to help you be more focused, or to get more clarity on what are the 3 things you need to prioritize today, right? That's an intentional move versus waking up and just starting to react to everything that comes your way. And what I found in my research is that women who were successful and fulfilled, which is a big important piece there, they're successful and fulfilled, they had a tendency, or the thing that they had in common is that they were making intentional moves, not just at the big moments when you think it matters a lot, of course, but really they were making these intentional moves every day for, on the micro level. And that's really important because it's the small steps, the small habits, the small actions, the small behavior changes that add up to the bigger ones, right? And so it's like, if you want to do something big, or you want to make big moves, I actually found that the best thing people can do is actually start by thinking small, or acting small. And so that is, I think, the importance of understanding power moves is that they're available to anybody. Anybody can start making them today, right this second. And that I think a lot of times when people think of power moves, they just think of the whole walking out on your boss and quitting your job and then being like, oh shoot, what am I going to do? But figuring out.
It doesn't have to be a power move they'll make a movie about.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like, it doesn't, of course, there are dramatic power moves and the ones that are, life-changing, but I always looked at this as like, well, if you're going to make those life-changing big moments, those big power moves, why can't you actually be incorporating those on a regular basis? And that's what they look like. And I think, part 2 of that question is like, well, then what does that look like? And so that was kind of what the book was about, and trying to explore is like, okay, well, what are these like daily, medium, and big power moves? And what does that mean? And I do get to a point in the book where I start to talk about like, you have to look at power moves as an overall approach to your career. It's a way that you approach your career. I use this metaphor of like, I'm sure you remember like when they would talk about, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. It's like power moves have to be the same thing. They're not a quick fix. They can't just be this one and done thing. They have to be part of your career lifestyle. They have to be part of your how you overall approach moves in your career.
Right. And when I looked at your list of power moves, there were, for me, corporate life was so bad that it sort of kicked my rear end out of there pretty quickly. But I did make those power moves. I had the hard conversations with my boss. I resigned from a position I hated. I did ask for a raise at one point, but ultimately I just went out on my own. And that turned out to be right for me, but it's certainly not right for everybody. So let's give people some examples of the big, medium, and small power moves. And then there are some I have specific questions for you about. So what are just a couple big power moves?
Yeah. So the big ones are, quitting the job that you hate, asking for a raise. For right now, maybe it's telling your employer, I'm a Black woman and what I'm going through, I need the support of having a mental health day today. Like I'm grieving. I cannot come to work. It's doing, another big power move could be asking to sit in on a project or join a project that maybe you weren't invited to, but saying, I want to have a seat at the table. A medium power move could be setting boundaries and saying no to something that you normally always say yes to, which I know is particularly hard, especially for women. Another medium power move could be taking an online course and learning a new skill. I had a friend who her job is kind of just naturally coming to an end at the end of the project, and they're not going to renew her. So her medium power move is sort of saying, okay, what is it that I want to do? Okay, I want to invest more time in this skill. So she's taking new online classes in order to make that transition. So, and then I should finish this. And then so the daily or small power moves could be a morning ritual, maybe a nighttime ritual. Maybe a daily power move for you is that you keep a work journal, and at the end of every week, you write down 3 things that you accomplished and 3 things that you learned or you wish you could improve upon or something. So small is definitely more, I think, like habits and behaviors. As you get up to like the medium and the big, they're more actionable.
Yes.
Having the conversation.
Yes. Quitting your job is, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty clear how to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, a work journal was one of the things I did want to ask you about. Maybe you just answered the question. I said, what sorts of things should you be writing in your work journal? At the end of each week, I write 3 wins and 3 failures. Mm-hmm. And that's just, I track that for my mastermind group that I'm a part of. But is a work journal 3 things you succeeded at and 3 lessons you wish you could have learned?
You can really honestly do a work journal however you want. That works. I like to also think about things like, did I get feedback on anything? What are the things I want to focus on next week? And a lot of times, if people are making goals, I'm always going to recommend, like, if you're going to make goals, make sure you have your employer's buy-in. So you're aligning your goals with what's important to them. The other thing for a work journal is you could track interpersonal skills, like, did you have any tough conversations? How did you feel this week? So things you learn, wins, things, events, anything that didn't go well, all of that is helpful. There's no real right or wrong way of keeping track of a work journal.
But you're not keeping notes for your future HR attorney. You're not.
No, I mean, it always helps to have a work journal that you can kind of go back on, because then you basically have this paper trail to be like, oh yeah, I did, kill it in that presentation, or it was because I spoke up at that thing that I was able to get on this project, which led me here. So like, it can help in your annual reviews. Absolutely. There's also an interesting statistic that I forget where I read it, but it was like, humans forget like 90% of what they learn within a week and like 75% of what they learn within like the next day. So by keeping a work journal, you're also like going to be able to kind of like have a better, I guess, pulse on like what it is that you're getting done each week,
Right. I got to this point where I noticed I was reading books and never taking action on any of the tips, never letting any of it soak in, just getting through the books.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is useless. I need to actually take it slow and let it soak in, like let this impact my life. What is a whisper network?
So a whisper network, they're very handy, is basically like a group of people. Like the whisper network I'm part of is 5 people on a text message. Everyone you're not anonymous on the text message, but you keep it a secret, the text message that you have. And you can basically use that network to share salary information or like project information. So an example of this would be, at least with mine, there's 5 of us on there. We know who each other are, but we don't share the information publicly at all. We don't invite people into the group. And I might share, hey, I got invited to speak at this conference. Here's how much they're willing to pay me. What do you guys think of that? Another person might say, oh, I'm working with this brand and they're paying me this much. Here's the scope of the work. If you were, working at a workplace, it might be you and some other people in a similar industry. And it might be like, hey, I'm asking my boss to get on this assignment. Here's what they're offering me in exchange. What do you guys think of it? So it's basically like a quiet networking group where you guys are agreeing to keep the information that's shared in that group a secret. This happens a lot with salaries within workplaces, sharing how much you make and your bonuses and that kind of stuff.
I've also seen those kind of threads within the Ladies Get Paid network. I don't know. Have you heard of Ladies Get Paid?
Yeah, I know, Claire.
Yeah. I was on one of their Slack channels for 15 seconds or something. And that's basically what I saw was, look at, this is my offer. Should it be more? And how do I get that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So obviously you're the kind of career expert where you've done your homework, you've spoken to the people, and they're highlighted in your book. But what are some of the big lessons you've learned running Career Contessa? I think you started in 2013.
Yeah. So I launched Career Contessa as a side hustle. I was actually getting my master's while I was working full time. And when I started working as a recruiter, which I loved, and I was at the very end of my master's program, and I was writing my thesis on millennial women in career resources, and Career Contessa was the prototype of that master's thesis. I fell into some loophole for grant money, and I was able to create it. And I really loved it. And basically my hypothesis was that kind of like the beginning part of my book is like, hey, millennial women are doing everything right based on like what we were told, it was going to be like when we graduated, and that we could be everything, we would have equal opportunities. But now that we're in the workplace, like, this is not what you told me it was going to be like. And is it even possible to have this successful and fulfilling career? Or is this like the new reality of like, hey, you're working 30 years somewhere, 9 to 5 and until you die kind of thing.
Right.
So with all that research, I basically realized that one of the things that did not set up not just millennial women, but millennials in general, was that the career resources we had, you go to school and the career center is telling you this, this, and this. And again, it's not the reality. As a recruiter, I was seeing that that also wasn't the reality. So I started Career Contessa as a thesis project. I kept it going because I was like, well, maybe I'll leverage this website into like a new job opportunity. Obviously, I leveraged it into a lot more because I eventually left. I was working at Hulu as a recruiter, and I eventually left Hulu to work on this full time. And I've learned, gosh, I have learned so much. It's also, sometimes I look back and I'm like, has it really taken me, so I left Hulu in late 2014, almost 2015. Like, have I really been working on this like full time for almost 6 years? Like there are days where I'm like, I've gotten nowhere. And then there are days where I'm like, oh no, I've accomplished a lot. Like I haven't like sat around on my butt for 6 years, And so I think that
it's almost 7 years, by the way.
Oh yeah, you're right. My God.
There you go. It's another year of your life.
That's even scarier. But I think some of the big takeaways I have, in no particular order, are things like listening to your gut. Like the times I have not listened to my gut, it has backfired badly.
Really?
I think I've had times where I've wanted to be a little bit more aggressive with things, and I just wasn't able to because I didn't have, I have a self-funded company, so there is a frustration of wanting to move faster than you can move. But there's also a silver lining in that you have to be a lot more thoughtful with what you're doing because you have to be scrappy. You don't have endless resources. With coronavirus happening, that was a huge, massive shift for everybody. And I think one of the things I was grateful for is a few years ago, I started to realize like I need to diversify my revenue streams. Like, something could happen or this thing could happen. I don't want to be tied to like any one platform or revenue stream or anything like that. And so life shifting with coronavirus wasn't nearly as painful because of that, so there, I definitely made some good moves, but again, that was also like following my gut. It was saying, hey, I'm going to invest resources in this area over here, and people being like, okay, that seems like a waste of your time. You know what I mean? And having to kind of fight against that a little bit.
How do you know when you say follow your gut? How do you know? Is it when you're as an entrepreneur, when you hear something or you get like a download and you think that's what's next? Is that your gut talking?
I think so. I mean, I guess I can only speak, from my experience and what my gut feels like, but it definitely feels like, for example, I created something called the Salary Project. That was just my gut saying, you know what, I bet it would be kind of cool to create some blog posts where we share the real salaries of people. And I bet you they would share it anonymously through like a Google document with us. That was just my gut being like, that sounds cool to me. I'm really excited about that. Let's do it. And like quickly making it into something that we could throw up in a blog post that grew. And now it's an entire database. To go to our developers and ask them to build that was, a bit of a fight because I think everyone was like, why do you need this? You've got this Google Doc, but having it as a legitimate database, it's like one of our number one ways of growing us as a company. And it's an amazing tool for people. And it can't be an amazing tool just as a Google Doc, So like, there are just some things I feel like where you fight for it. And like when people ask you to back up why you want this thing so badly, or what are you going to use it for, this or that, it's like, sometimes I don't always have that part of the answer, but I have the answer of like, this tool needs to exist. Like this doesn't exist.
You had the vision.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm a really visual person. So I think that's another thing is like, what's been nice about my career at Career Contessa versus as a recruiter is like, it's much more creative. It's much more visual. I'm building things a lot more than I was as a recruiter, So yeah, I can also describe it as like, I've done some marketing things before where I'm like, I don't really feel like that's me. That's not really my voice. Like, no way would I do this without like someone else pushing me and saying like, no, this is the way to do it. This is the way to. And when I did it, it backfired. And I was like, I should have listened to my gut. So I feel like maybe the times when you don't listen to your gut, it's always a lot louder, but you learn to pay attention to when you're like, if any part of your little antenna is going off saying like, I don't know, like you should listen to that part of it.
Perfect. And this is going to feel a little bit like backtracking, but I did want to highlight my favorite small power move. You said, say, excuse me, I'm not done with my thought to an interrupter.
Yeah.
So many days I wish I had known what to say. Now I just keep talking. If someone interrupts me, I literally just talk louder and keep talking. But I remember the days in meetings when it seemed like somebody wanted to win the meeting and there was always somebody who was willing to interrupt me and dominate.
Yeah. I interviewed this woman once she said what her strategy is like, if she's about to say, I'm going to the park and someone starts to interrupt her, she says, I'm going. And she goes, at some point people look at you because they're like, what is going on over there? She's like, I just pause on whatever word they start to interrupt me on and repeat it nonstop so that they truly recognize it. I was like, that's so gutsy.
Yeah. That really is gutsy.
I know, it makes me uncomfortable just thinking about it.
Kind of clears a room, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I did also want to let listeners know, I was surprised and impressed with the amount of the book that you dedicated to the fundamentals of power moves, which aren't really power moves. They're more like self-care. And even the chapter about, shutting down the critical voice and how to deal with it in small ways to tweak it over time so that it evolves into more of a coach than a critic. And I really thought, wow, this is really comprehensive in terms of what people can expect from the book. Okay, perfect. So to get your copy of Power Moves, please go to hilaryhendershot.com/169. We'll include links to everything, Lauren, but it's the book and careercontessa.com, right? Anything else?
Yeah. So the book is powermovesbook.com and then careercontessa.com, and at Career Contessa on pretty much any and every social channel you can think of, except for TikTok. I'm not doing that yet.
Okay, good for you. Are you on Pinterest?
I'm on Pinterest.
Good for you. I'm impressed. Very good. Okay, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
As we wrap things up here for today, I need to review with you the things I have to disclose as a fiduciary financial advisor offering wealth management services through my firm, Hendershot Wealth Management, LLC. You should know that the opinions I express on Profit Boss Radio are my own, and they can change. The content I provide in the show is for general education. It's not intended as specific investment advice, nor do I recommend any specific financial products. Unlike how I roll at home with my husband, I can't guarantee that my statements, opinions, or forecasts are always 100% right. Of course, I wish I could peek into that proverbial crystal ball, but so far, I haven't found it. Past performance is not indicative of future results. I talk a lot about indexes, and I want you to know you can't actually buy an index because, of course, when you take a list of companies and create a product that allows people to invest in those companies, there are fees and expenses involved that reduce returns. Remember, all investing involves risk, which, as you know, means you could lose your money. And I have to tell you that there is no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. And that should keep my lawyers happy. Have a great day.